Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday. So Tuesday it is, guys. I hope everybody has had a good Monday. Mondays. Let me tell you, Mondays can be fun, right? They can be fun. It was kind of my first Monday back from being gone for a while, out of the country and stuff. So it was a little bit trying to get back in the swing of things and getting caught up and all that kind of stuff. So took me a little bit to do that, but it was a good day overall. It was a good day. So I'm gonna start off with just doing this. I have actually been watching something. I've been watching. Let's see. There we go. I have been watching soccer, the World Cup specifically, or football, if you use the right term, I guess. You know, in America, it's soccer, and everywhere else, it's football. So I have never watched, and to be honest, I probably have never watched a full game of professional soccer in my entire life. I got to be honest, I never have. So I decided, researching soccer and football and all that kind of stuff, and never watching it before, and then realizing, oh wait, the World Cup is happening in, all the games are being played in Canada, US, and Mexico. I was like, well, that's kind of cool. So now it's kind of in our country. Maybe I really should pay attention to this. And then and I'll tell you what really brought it on. What really brought on watching soccer is my time in France. That was like the conversation around the dinner table, and rightfully so, right? Because when you look at the World Cup and then the makeup of the teams, France is really good. Like, they are really good. So if you're just tuning in, you've actually tuned into a real estate show, but I'm talking about soccer. so just FYI, if you're a real estate agent, I will get to the real estate part of this show, but right now I'm talking about soccer. This is just part of the show where I just kind of hang out and have a little bit of fun with you guys. But so I've been watching soccer. I bought the Fox One subscription for the next couple months just so I can kind of log in, catch clips of games and watch games when I have time, that kind of stuff. And I found it extremely fascinating learning about FIFA and World Cup and how this works and what this looks like. And I've been enjoying it. Anybody else out there enjoying and watch any of this? And I got to watch the actual USA play their game against Paraguay, and it was just fun to watch. They're better than they have been in the past. To be honest, USA does not have a big winning track record in the World Cup whatsoever. And so it's been kind of neat. And there's so many things I didn't know about soccer, and I didn't really know about World Cup. And this sounds so bad, but I didn't realize it was not a yearly thing. I didn't realize it was like every 3 years. Is it 3 or 4 years that this happens? Isn't that horrible? I didn't know that. But again, I just never been my world. My daughter started playing soccer, and so I got to kind of enjoy watching her play, and then it kind of led to this and all the conversations. So I've been enjoying the World Cup. And just for those out there, just to throw this out, I encourage you to go check out soccer. Go watch some World Cup. It's kind of fascinating the way it works. The rules and stuff like that are very different. The way that they keep track of time and penalties and all that. It's like a continuous clock that just runs throughout the whole game. You have 2 45-minute halves that goes up to 90 minutes. But then there's no breaks, no timeouts. The time just keeps ticking up. But what ends up happening is the refs then talk and they add more time to the end of the game. So the game's going to be 90 minutes long. Then there's the bonus time for any kind of delays that they then tack on at the end. And so that's kind of been fascinating because you kind of know how long a game's going to be. And that's cool because it's like, I know how much time it's going to take me to watch this entire game, and then it's going to be whatever it's going to be. And then it's like, then I began to research, like, how in the world does World Cup work? How's it structured and all that kind of stuff. And then I began to realize that you got like 12 different groups to start off at the very beginning of the World Cup. You got Group A through, let's see, I got it up here, like Group L. And in each one of those groups is a team from a different country inside a different region. So each team is playing a different country from a different region, not in their same region. So then what ends up happening, they have this game where it keeps track of like points, like wins help. You get points for winning, but then there's other tiebreaker type situations. And what ends up happening inside of each group, the 2 top teams from each of those groups go on to basically what they would call the knockout stage. And that knockout stage is where basically if you lose, you're out. So that's when the tournament really begins. So right now, each group is trying to find out which teams are the best. And this is where it's just kind of fascinating to watch some of these games and learn and see how they play and then figure out like which one you kind of want to root for. I mean, obviously we're going to root for USA. I'm from USA. I'm going to root for them, but look, they're not as good as like some places like France, Spain, Argentina. Like those places are really good and they are fun to watch. These guys are, wow, so talented the way they can handle the ball with their feet and their heads and everything else. But anyway, massive bunny trail, right? Massive bunny trail. Anyway, there you go. That is literally what I've been up to. And let me know if anyone else has been watching soccer at all. I don't know if you guys are or not. Probably not. I'm going to go with probably not. I never had. But I have been enjoying it. All right. So with that being said, let me briefly tell you, if this is your first time here, what I do is I just invite you into my little office here. This is kind of part of my everyday morning practice that I've done for many years. I just read specific real estate news. And I would just personally, I would just make some little notes in my journal about things that are happening in the industry. And I might use it as talking points, training points for my own agents, that kind of stuff. Basically help myself stay on point about what's going on in my industry, and then also help my agents to kind of do likewise. And so this is my 58th episode doing this. So it's been 58 times I've invited people into my process of doing this. And what I'm literally doing on this live stream is I go into my news sources that I've read for many years, and I just find articles that just seem like, okay, we probably should discuss this, talk about this, and see where things are going. And I just throw it out there here where you're watching now, and we talk about it. I love chat. I love questions. I love comments. I love all that kind of stuff. So please join me in bringing these, conversations to life. I think that's the exciting thing about this, because I might have a perspective and you might have a perspective. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about these type of things as well. So don't be bashful. Communicate with me. I think it's great. With all that being said, let me briefly tell you what we're going to be covering in today's show, and then I'll begin with the intro of the show and then the actual content of it. So let's start off with what I'll be talking about. So today, and this, just so you know, I pull up a bunch of articles because there's just so many things I could talk about, and I just try to pull up a few articles that make sense. And sometimes I don't get through them all, and I'm not trying to get through them all. I just throw them up there and we talk through them as we have time. So today I'm going to begin with an article from the National Association of REALTORS. It says tax experts weigh in on more homes on the market act. If you don't know right now, the National Association of REALTORS is having their legislative meetings right now, and I believe that's in Washington, D.C. So that's all taking place right now. So there's a lot of dialogue when it comes to tax code and policies and that kind of stuff that can be passed, and they're advocating for that kind of stuff. So really good conversations are happening. This specific conversation is in regards to like capital gain tax and what that might look like, going over a bill that's being proposed, HR 1340, to the Congress. And it's called the More Homes on the Market Act. We want to just kind of go through this and see what this is, understand the implications of this type of stuff. Because if this does pass, it should, in essence, open up a little bit more homes to be available to come on the market. And that's because of the capital gain tax. It's addressing that specifically. So we're gonna take some time, and I'm not gonna read the bill, obviously, but I encourage you to do so, at least skim through it. I'm not gonna read the bill because bills always have all kinds of other fluff in it. We're gonna talk about just the main point of the bill and what this could do for real estate. And we'll read, kind of skim through the article of National Association of REALTORS. I'll read a statement about what the bill is and what it's going to be addressing, so we have clarity on that. And then I'm going to go over a one-page sheet that the National Association of REALTORS put out, talking about the benefits and what this might look like. And it's like an infographic. We'll kind of go through that together. Then I'm going to switch gears, and we're going to talk about, if we have time, we're going to talk about the rent trap. And it's an article by Inman. It says, why leaders monetize market pressure while agents ignore it. This is food for thought for agents out there. This is something that you guys want to be thinking about, thinking through, and processing, because a lot of times we can fall into the trap that we just wait for business to happen and we don't create business. And this is an article really kind of going into the root of that. What do I need to do to actually create business? And one of the arguments that this is going to be making is going after the rental market and what that might look like. So we're going to have that discussion. And then if we have time, we're going to go into from chatbots to collaborators, AI's next era. We're going to talk about AI very briefly. I'm not going to go through this article very deeply. I think AI and that whole verbiage stuff is actually kind of annoying sometimes. It's like all this overpromised stuff and underdelivered. I think there's a use case for it. I don't think it's going to, drastically change every aspect of our jobs, but it's going to change a lot of it. So we'll keep talking about that. And then finally, if we have time, I'll go over Google's nationwide expansion into home listings shakes real estate incumbents. I talked about this yesterday in live stream in more detail. I'm not trying to get to that article. If we do, it had a couple more summary notes in regards to Google entering into the listing portal wars that I thought I'd go over. But yeah, well, if we get there, awesome. All right, that's what's in store, guys. I hope you guys can stay for the whole thing. Hopefully there's something inside of that summary that piques your interest, that you want to stay here. And like I said, please, comment, like, share, all those type of things. Tell your friends, all that kind of stuff, right? All right. Oh, and let me just add this. And I don't usually do this. Look, I'm a new channel here. Okay. I am not a big time streamer, nor am I even trying to be. I do this because it's what I do every day. I have a whole team of agents that I'm work with and try to help and teach. So it just works within my framework of what I do as a job. But I'm at 494 subscribers. Not very many. I don't have very many subscribers on YouTube. And there is that threshold. And I'm a goal setter kind of guy. Like, I'm so close to the 500 mark. I would like to hit that. So if you've not subscribed, consider doing so, just to push that number up just a little bit for me. That'd be awesome. I just 500 just sounds like a cool number. 494 is a little short. So I'd appreciate it. All right. Here we go, guys. Let's go ahead and get started with the actual show. Welcome to the Real Estate Brief. I'm Adam. Today, we're going to be cutting through the noise. We're going to get to the truth in the news. We're going to look at the data, and I'm going to give you some of my observations and where I believe you can find some opportunity. So if you're ready to gain your real estate edge, let's dive into our very first story. This story is going to be not exactly too lengthy, but it's going to be a conversation that needs to be happening because we want to stay on point in regards to what is going on in Washington. Because there are some bills being proposed by the National Association of REALTORS and other Congress members about that could benefit the real estate industry. So we want to keep our finger on the pulse and know what's going on there. So let's go ahead and start talking about this very first story. And this one right here is the capital gain solution. All right. It's going to be an inside look at the More Homes on the Market Act, which is more specifically HR 1340. That is the bill that's being proposed. So if you want to kind of read through that bill, you can. You can go on to the Congress website, which is congress.gov. You can go under bills and type in HR 1340 and it should come up. Okay. You can listen to it as an audio if you want to, so they can read it to you, or you can read through it. It's up to you, but that's all on there. Feel free to check that out and get some information about what's going on. But what's really happening here is the National Association of REALTORS and their tax policy experts just broke down how capital gain rules are choking housing supply. They had a forum and they went on there and they were talking about this. They were pointing to the bipartisan More Homes on the Market Act and what that could possibly do to fix the capital gain issue that keeps people from putting their homes on the market. Now, there is a lot of political stuff inside of bills, like there always is, and there's a lot of stuff they got to kind of get through to get down to the root to make this thing kind of pass. So there'll be a lot of negotiation back and forth, that kind of stuff. But overall, the National Association of REALTORS is backing this bill because it is a good move for home ownership and for those who are wanting to sell but are afraid to sell because of the amount of capital gain tax they will be paying if they do so. So this bill specifically is addressing something that has not been addressed since the 90s. So I think it's time, right? I think it's definitely time to talk about this. I think it was 1997 that this was actually addressed at all. So let's get into this article. Tax experts weigh in on More Homes on the Market Act. Panelists make the case for doubling the home equity tax exclusion to unlock inventory and help families move. Ahmad, hello, Ahmad. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Appreciate the likes, everybody. Thank you guys for joining in. So there's a panel of tax experts and stuff like that that's on here. If you want to know who these people are, I can go from left to right. Let me on TikTok here, I'll just cut my face in half and let you see the screen for just a second. From left, you have Jessica Lotz, NAR Deputy Chief Economist and Vice President of Research, right there. Matt Strauss, NEA Director of Government Advocacy. Joe Harris, NAR Vice President of Government Advocacy. Evan Ledard, NAR Director of Federal Tax Policy. And Shannon McGaughan, NAR Executive Vice President and Chief Advocacy Officer. So these people are talking. These these advisors and these people are talking about this bill and what this might look like. So what does it say? It says attendees at the realtor legislative meetings heard directly from the National Association of REALTORS tax policy experts on Sunday afternoon as they weighed in on how to address taxes on home equity. Now, this is a very important topic, even if you might not realize how important it is, because sometimes we just think about home values and we talk about the market and, supply and demand and all those type of things. And we forget that there is a nuance inside of that that talks more specifically about the tax code and the liability of the money that is in charge once you do sell something. So a lot of times we think about inflation and the price of homes and the value of homes, but then we don't factor in the cost of actually selling a home that goes into the seller and why they might talk to their tax advisor. And the tax advisor might just simply say is like, well, if you sell, here's the tax you're going to pay on that. And then immediately the seller's like, whoa, not time, right? So this bill is specifically addressing that. Ahmad, what we're talking about is a current bill that is being suggested at Congress. It's H.R. 1340 that is talking about adjusting the capital gain tax, the qualifying amount. And we're going to get into a little bit what that means. And basically, just in a nutshell, what they're talking about doing is increasing that threshold up so you can avoid capital gain for a higher value property. So that's it in a nutshell, Ahmad. It says NAR Executive Vice President and Chief Advocacy Officer Shannon McGahn moderated a panel to discuss NAR's advocacy around the home equity tax exclusion, with many of the panelists pointing to the organization's support of the More Homes on the Market Act. The legislation would double the home equity tax exclusion for the first time since 1997. Now, let me briefly just read the synopsis, the summary of what this bill states. And this is coming directly from the congress.gov website. It says, introduced in-house on 2/13/2025. So it's been introduced for a long time. It's been negotiated back and forth. We're getting close. This is how long it takes to pass bills, guys. This bill increases the amount of gain from the sale of a principal residence. Now, principal means your main residence, okay, not investment properties, but your main residence, that an individual may exclude from gross income or for federal tax purposes. Okay, so in other words, what is that threshold? What is it that I can exclude from having to pay capital gain tax? What is that dollar amount? Under the bill, an individual may exclude from gross income gain from the sale of a principal residence of up to $500,000. Okay, that currently sitting at $250,000. That's why it's doubling. It's going from $250,000 exclusion to $500,000. That's for single people. And taxpayers who are married and file a joint federal income tax return may exclude up to $1 million, currently sitting at $500,000. The bill also requires these amounts to be adjusted annually for inflation. So instead of having a number that just sits at, $250,000 and $500,000, it's now double that amount, which if you factor in inflation over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years, guess what? That $250,000 exclusion from having to pay capital gain on a property is almost irrelevant. When you start factoring in the average selling price is like $380 in most, if you take the whole country as a whole. That means they're on the hook for $130,000 of capital gain to sell that home, right? So this bumping up to a single family filing of $500,000 and $1 million for joint married couples, you can immediately see how this tax savings could free up the market to put more homes on the market. Now, what I also like is the bill went a little farther as well. They're not saying it's a set amount. They're using that as the base, and then it can be adjusted annually based on inflation. So just kind of like the PVA office might work, right? Your assessment goes up as appraisals go up and the value goes up. So the bill is suggesting that there's even a way for that metric to be able to be adjusted based upon what the inflation was every single year. So this helps that pendulum to kind of keep moving and keeps freeing up the homes to be able to go back onto the market. So you can kind of see immediately how this is working. Dominio, good morning to you. Good, thank you for being here. Kevin as well, thank you for being here. Good morning to you guys. Or gals, I'm not sure. Sorry. But good morning to you guys. All right, so that gives you an idea on what this bill is, okay? Evan Ledard, NAR Director of Federal Tax Policy, said while he thinks doubling the home equity exclusion is reason enough to support the bill, there are some other important reasons for supporting the act. This is about people who want to move. We have families that need to size up their homes but don't have access because this tax is locking up inventory. That's just a simple thing. We don't think about this, but this is a big deal. Because you had this conversation, you should be having these conversations all the time with your clients. Is if they're putting the house on the market, they need to be talking to their CPA and getting advice on their tax liability when they go to sell that on the capital gain. This kind of bill is going to help that and cushion that, especially if you're in the more rural areas. If it's $1 million that you're excluded from having to pay capital gain on, that's a massive opening of inventory that sellers won't have to pay tax on their homes if they sell it. Big move. Says Joe Harris, NER Vice President of Government Advocacy, pointed out that NER utilizes a multi-pronged approach to lobby on behalf of members. While much of the work does focus on Congress and driving legislative action, the advocacy team also regularly communicates with White House officials as well as administrative staff and decision makers. Quote, the White House is an important partner in just about every legislative effort that moves through Congress, Harris said. We've been very intentional in our efforts. We have had over 50, sorry, I thought I had my screen shared, I'm sorry. We've had over 50 meetings with the White House on this issue just in this Congress. While the More Homes on the Market Act has bipartisan support in the House and Senate, there continues to be skepticism. Matt Strauss, NER Director of Government Advocacy, broke down how NER's advocacy team addresses those concerns and is working to expand the coalition supporting this piece of legislation. Now, I'm going to pause for just a second, and we're going to take a moment away from this topic in this article and just talk about this as what good NAR is. All right. We can a lot of times conflate and think that the National Association of Realtors is only about MLS and training and all those type of things. And we can have all of our gripes about some of the things they might do and all that kind of stuff. One thing I will continually to just champion is how they lobby and how they work for the benefit of homeowners and sellers and agents as a whole with our government. And this is the part where I would encourage those that are real estate agents, that are realtors, to pay attention to what RPAC is, right? RPAC is our lobbying wing, where we donate money to that to help, do exactly what they're being talking about right here. We don't want to ever go to the position where we're so against National Association of Realtors because we might disagree with maybe some of their MLS policies, or we feel like they're the police, or whatever that might be. They're trying to clean all that up anyway. They're listening to their membership base and they're working on that. So let's give them all the grace in the world. But we don't want to forget this advocacy group and what they're actually doing here. Just read through this and see the benefit about what they're doing. So let's just not negate that. Okay, so let's take a moment and remember that this is also what the National Association of Realtors does, and it's a very good thing. I feel like that's all they should do. Stop spending money on Super Bowl ads. Well, now that fair argument. I think I wouldn't necessarily disagree. I think they kind of get their fingers in a lot of different areas, and it creates major problems. I think a lot of times they can overreach their oversight and what they truly are there for, and I do think they're trying to work on that. They have begin to listen and make some changes. I mean, there's still some to be done. And I keep saying, look, I'm all for reform. And they need to be listening more, and they need to be paying attention to more, and they need to make sure they stay in their lane. So, I would absolutely agree. I think they want to try to be there for everything, but I think this is their biggest asset to real estate agents and consumers in general. I think this is one of the best things that they do. And I would agree. I think there are some things that they cross the line into, and they think that they can rule everything. And I think that's a misstep on their part. I really do. So yeah, thank you for that. I agree with you 100% on this. How the equity tax affects home inventory. Bringing the research lens to the discussion was Jessica Lotz, NAR Deputy Chief Economist and Vice President of Research. Lotz connected the dots on how the home equity tax impacts supply, sharing that potential home sellers avoid the tax hit rather than putting their home on the market, farther reducing inventory. I mean, it's a simple logical thing, right? If I'm going to sell a house at this amount, and then I'm going to have to pay this huge amount in tax bill, is the profit I make off the house and then have the tax bill worth it, right? So that's the reality. And this is where you go back to the whole idea of supply and demand and also the cost of, selling a home and then being able to go out and buy another home. All that math is very, very important. And this is where, as real estate agents, we just got to stay on point on this. We got to understand how all these things kind of work together. McGon closed out the session highlighting NAR's advocacy's new morehomes.realtor webpage that shares all of NAR's research and fact sheets on the home equity tax. So there is a link, right? And I opened this up. I don't know if I still had this open or not. I think I just downloaded the infographic from there. But that morehomes.realtor, okay? So morehomes.realtor. There is a page on there. If you want to get into the weeds a little bit more and through what this is going on, they have a whole article there and a bunch of links to go a little bit deeper into this. I encourage you to do that. I kind of poked around that this morning. I'm going to do a little bit more later. I'm going to bring this up in meetings with my own agents. I think this is something we just got to pay attention to, because when you're sitting down, and this is the thing, when you're going into a listing appointment and you're start talking about pricing and what that might look like, this has got to be part of those conversations. You've got to point them back to their CPA, say, look, I don't know what your tax situation is, but that is a factor. And when you go to sell this house and the value you're going to make, right? But then at the same time, you don't want them to hone in on just a couple things, right? If they sell their house and they make X amount of money and then they have to pay X amount of taxes, then they could almost just immediately just say, well, it's not worth it. But then you got to get in the weeds a little bit more and just say, well, yeah, but what kind of life circumstances have changed for you? Especially like if they live in a much bigger house that requires more taxes, more upkeep, more maintenance, all those type of things, then it might still be worth them selling the home and then moving into some other place. So we just got to be able to have this kind of conversation when it comes to the math, because at the end of the day, what is the main deciding factor that if somebody sells for a certain price is the amount of money they're going to walk away with, because they're going to be looking at that dollar amount and asking themselves the question is, what can I buy in replacement of that, right? What does that look like for my next purchase? Now, sometimes people just need to move because they have to move, but there are many cases where someone might be moving in a different city or in the same city, and they need to know what those actual numbers are. So we got to be really good at this. We got to be able to understand the math here, and this is part of that equation. If this passes, then this really helps that capital gain side of the equation. Harris said every month, every year that passes by that, we're not doing anything on capital gains. We're not doing anything on easing the regulatory burdens, lifting red tape, addressing issues around modular housing, manufactured housing. The more time we kick the can, the worse the situation is going to be. Yeah, right? That's absolutely. This is not something you just kind of keep kicking the can down the road. These are real issues that we are fighting right now. The affordability gap, the cost of selling, the tax you have to pay to do that, the amount of homes on the market. So you start talking about supply and demand. You start talking about job markets. All these type of things is what makes an economy work. And I mention this all the time. If you really want to get into the economy, how it works, just pick up this simple book. I mention this book all the time. How economy grows and why it crashes. It's such a simple read, but for those that maybe just wrestle with the whole concept of the economy because we hear all these news articles and we get so confused on how this all works, simplest book you're ever going to read that just makes it the most simple thing to understand. And then you can get more complex from there. It does kind of end in a more complex way, but it builds upon that to get you to the point where when you're reading news like this and you're hearing news like this, you're able to kind of connect the dots. So check it out. Yeah, it's a great book. It's a really great book. I thought about this. This might be a good live stream to do is go through just some of my favorite books and why they're my favorite books. Let me know if you guys would be interested in that. I read a lot, so I think that might be kind of fun to do that. Let you guys in on my own personal reading habits. All right, so let's go into the actual graphic here just a little bit, and then we'll wrap this conversation up. Let me see if I can, I want to be able to share this. I don't know if I'll get flagged for this or not on TikTok. Sometimes it's just weird how TikTok will sometimes do that. I don't want to cover up my face too much, but you guys need to be able to see what I'm looking at. So you're not gonna be able to see my face, but you're gonna be able to see what's on the screen. How's that? You can see my lips. All right. All right. So here we go. This is an infographic put out by the National Association of REALTORs. It's talking about the outdated tax policy is locking up America's housing market. So now it's going to break down like, why are people not selling because of capital gain tax? What does that look like, right? So modernizing capital gains tax policy would unlock housing inventory, help first-time buyers, support families and seniors, improve affordability, and strengthen local and national economies, creating jobs and revenue. More homes, more mobility, more opportunity. Let me pause for just 1 second, though. The interesting thing here is there's an article that I didn't run today, but I was going to read it just briefly because it kind of went right along with this. There are many cities across America right now that the starting homes, like the new built homes, are starting at just under $1 million, and some are over $1 million. Okay, so let's just think through this for just a second. If this bill does not pass, that means that person buying that home could be on the hook for capital gain tax for a high amount because they're not excluded. Nothing above what they've sold that home for is protected for capital gain. So every time inflation happens on that property, they will have to pay capital gain based on the tax code currently if this bill does not pass. So just put that in perspective. It says America's housing market is frozen. Millions of homeowners are staying put because selling would trigger major tax consequences. Fewer homes on the market means higher prices for younger families and first-time buyers. Makes sense, right? So if these homes are not coming on the market and we don't have a huge inventory, prices are going to keep escalating. And so you have more negotiation, that kind of stuff. So if we free up the market, we get more homes on the market, those prices could potentially come down. Current capital gains exclusion levels have not been updated since 1997. Guys, you know how much inflation has happened since 1997? Just in the past 5 to 7 years, it's changed a lot. Housing inventory remains near historic lows. This is the problem currently, okay? Each one of those is a category that we sit here with the affordability problem, and that's where we are, right? Americans agree it's time to modernize capital gain tax. 82% of Americans support adjusting the current capital gains tax to account for inflation. I mean, no brainer in my opinion. Includes over 80% of Democrats, independents, and Republicans. Why wouldn't we all agree on this, right? I mean, sure. It says capital gains tax exclusion has gone unchanged tonight. We talked about that. 1997, $250,000 for individual, $500,000 for married couple. Median home values have increased 225% increase since 1997. Home values far outpaced inflation, leaving outdated tax rules behind. I think it's time we address this issue, right? Don't you guys think this is a time to address this? It talks about who pays the price. Young buyers, first-time buyers are older than ever before, now averaging age 40. Why is that? It's because they can't afford the homes on the market without having a good, stable career and a good down payment. You got to have good income to be able to afford the house and the price of them right now. Growing families struggle to find homes that fit their needs because inventory remains constrained. People don't want to sell their homes that would work for these families because of the capital gain tax. It would free up some of the market. Seniors, local economies. By the numbers, nearly 5 million U.S. housing shortage. We are short 5 million on the market to make up any kind of deficit. The economic activity generated by every home sale, $134,260. That means for every home sales, the economic activity in a community is roughly around $134,000. That's an insane amount of money being poured back into the economy for jobs. 18%. Real estate is approximately 18% of the U.S. economy. We're talking about almost 25%, right? We're getting close to that 25% mark where it makes up almost a quarter of our entire economy. It's something we don't ignore and we just keep kicking the can. We focus on it now. We start addressing things. $232,300 increase in home equity over the past decade for typical homeowner. We have almost, for single family files, almost entirely reached the $250,000 mark that it's currently set at, right? So they're almost paying tax on every bit of that capital gain. Solutions to unlock more homes. More Homes on the Market Act. We talked about that. Home prices then and now. The median existing single-family home price has risen dramatically over the past 28 years. 225% increase. Back in 1997, the average median price was $129,000. Now it's $419,000. Yeah, guys, it's time to reform it. We need to reform this. Like, it's time. I mean, it's kind of crazy that this has not been addressed, but it's just one of those things, out of mind, out of sight. You don't think about it, but when you start having these tensions in your market and the economy, then it kind of comes to surface at some point. And this is now, it's been going on for over a year, but still, we're getting close, guys. We're getting close. All right, let's go into another conversation real quick, and I might be able to get this one in one more. We'll see how much I talk. We're shifting gears now. Instead of talking about markets and taxes and all that kind of stuff, we're going to jump into like kind of just a topic to get you guys thinking as real estate agents about not just sitting on the sidelines waiting for things to happen, but literally making things happen. And this article is going to be talking about something kind of very specific. It's going to be talking about going out and finding business inside of like the rental market and what that might look like. So let's go through this one. It says the rent trap: why leaders monetize market pressure while agents ignore it. Give renters options they currently don't even know exist. Okay. This happens a lot. I think a lot of times we don't realize that renters, especially right now, are paying close to what a mortgage costs, but they don't realize that. Most of them have always rented. Some of them grew up in families that always rented. They just don't know. So there's a market. So the encouragement in this article is encouraging agents. It's like, guys, like, go out and make business. There are renters out there that need to buy homes. They're capable and have the income to be able to buy a home. All right, so here it goes. Every market creates its own narrative of fear. Right now, that narrative is affordability and uncertainty. Buyers are frozen, sellers are cautious, and the average agent is paralyzed asking, where did the opportunity go? Okay, there is an element of this. I'd say a lot of agents are actually still working really hard right now and are doing this, but just as food for thought, right? And then I like his statement right here. Opportunity never disappears. It shifts. Okay, this is Burl Workman. It said this. Opportunity never disappears. It shifts. That's the exact, that is absolutely true. You know, opportunity is always there. There's always the same amount of opportunity out there. It's just that that target shifts around depending on what's happened. And right now there's a shift. So what do we do in response? We shift with it to find the business. So this is his argument. This is, and right now it's shifted directly into a segment of the market, and this is true, that most experienced agents, and he goes on, this is a bold statement, are too arrogant or too lazy to touch the renters. Guys, this is true. We can easily fall into the status quo or the I'm better than idea of what we do based upon what the market used to be. You know, we could have been a multi-million dollar selling agent and just been at the top of the world, the top of our game and doing great. And then all of a sudden the market and then the opportunity shifts to another segment that is perceived as a less than me or what I do. Therefore, with that mentality, we miss the opportunity and then we suffer for it. Let me just give you a caution, and that caution is avoid pride. Pride has no room in real estate, none whatsoever, because that market is always, that pendulum is always swinging and shifting around, that you as an agent owe the fiduciary responsibility to everybody in your community, no matter who they are. And don't ever rest and think that I am something great. Be willing to be humble and help everybody in your community be able to seize the American dream of owning a home. Okay? I just encourage you, avoid this. Like, oh, I don't do that. I only sell luxury homes. The luxury home market could tank one day. What are you going to do then? Right? You're going to put all your eggs in one basket. I'm not saying don't market yourself as a luxury agent, whatever, but if that's all you think you are and you're too good for anything else, your day's coming. Your day's coming, guys. I've been doing this for a long time. It's coming. And a lot of times people will still keep the nice BMWs to keep up that image, but at the same time, their checkbook is empty. Their bank account's gone. But they'll ride that image because they just don't want to be, humble and go to where the business is anymore because they perceive it as demeaning. If you're a leader, you don't look for activity, you look for pressure. Renters aren't just a lead source. They're a pressurized segment of the population facing immediate, monthly, unavoidable financial erosion, paying essentially 100% interest, literally paying down someone else's mortgage and creating wealth for their owners. While your competition is waiting for ready now buyers to fall out of the sky, you should be developing leaders who know how to step into that pressure and create movement. Right? Sorry, something was vibrating. I couldn't figure out what it was. Right? Isn't that true? Like, I mean, why are we looking for anything ready now? Like, there's a lot of not ready nows. A lot of people don't even understand what's going on in the market. They read the news. They don't even know what's going on. Don't wait for it. This is an opportunity. It says, stop persuading, start clarifying. One of the biggest failures in this business is the belief that opportunity comes from persuasion. It doesn't. It comes from clarity. It comes from being clear of mind about what's going on in the market and being ready to shift and adapt to where those things are. Average agents wait for someone to raise their hand and say, I'm ready to buy. Leaders recognize the decision long before the client does. Renters feel the instability of rising costs, but they lack the roadmap to escape. Guys, this is where I would really lean into understanding what this market is. Renters feel the inability, they don't understand the whole process of being able to move to buy a house. The opportunity has shifted from where we just all of a sudden just get clients all the time to now we have to go out and find them. And that means renters out there that are paying a high amount in rent that obviously have enough money to actually be able to buy a house, that we then got to be able to go in and advise them and show them a roadmap on how they can actually buy a house. That is a whole pool of buyers that is untapped by a lot of agents out there. And it's shifted a little bit. Don't wait for the ready now buyers. Let's find them. Now, it will take some work. It will take some work to convert them, but they're there. That's where a lot of the business is at right now. They don't have a home to sell either, guys. Like, they're just renting. Understanding creates movement. When a renter finally sees the math of long-term impact versus the rent cycle, the conversation changes. They don't move because they were convinced. They move because they finally understand the cost of their own inaction. So it's going in and showing them the math and showing them exactly what works and what doesn't work and what the actual cost of home ownership is compared to what they're paying. Okay? You got to know the math. The myth of efficiency. Established agents often brag about being selective. They chase efficiency. They only want the low-hanging fruit. It says efficiency is often just a mask for inconsistency or lack of desire to do hard things, so they pretend to be busy but don't actually do the activities that some might feel are hard. Here's the thing, and I will see this all the time. I can tell you right now, like, the up-and-coming agents in your market that are going to be the next top producers are the ones going out and doing the legwork. And then the ones that stay at the top continually do that legwork. They go where the money's at. They don't just sit back and rest on the laurel and say, well, this is what I am. This is how it's always worked. I'm going to continue to do this. No, that agent that works hard, that goes out and generates business, is in it for the long haul. And the one that adapts and changes and is ebbing and flowing is going to be in this industry for a very, very long time. Very, very long time. The database is not a filing cabinet. Most agents are sitting on a gold mine they refuse to dig. Their database is filled with renters and leads they've labeled as dead because they weren't ready to sign a contract in 30 days. This is a failure of leadership. Opportunity isn't new. It's already sitting in your CRM. Misunderstood, underengaged, and waiting for someone with enough vision to approach it differently. So I hear this all the time. I hear this all the time. Leads are dead. They don't really mean anything. Yeah, that's the hard work, right? You got to convert them. You got to figure out systems and stuff in place to stay in front of them. What does that look like? You got to do it. It just doesn't happen automatically. So food for thought, guys. Go for where the business is. Business has shifted. Go find it. I'm just going to briefly touch on this last article and I'm going to jump off of here. Got a meeting coming up. I talked about this yesterday. This is just something I want to kind of bring to the forefront just as a wrap up, little bow on it. I'm sure this is going to be a topic we're going to be talking about probably for a while as it gets rolled out. But this is in regards to Google's nationwide expansion into home listings and how it's shaken up some of the incumbents, like Zillow and Redfin and things like that. So let's briefly go through Yahoo Finance. Yahoo Finance by Benzinga had this article written. And even though I covered it yesterday in the live stream, this kind of put a nice little summary on all the little ins and outs of this. So let's read through this just real quick to wrap up today's show, and we'll be back tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. to talk about more stuff. It says Google's nationwide expansion to home listings shakes real estate incumbents. If you guys don't know, if you weren't here yesterday, just real quick, Google is basically teamed up with a company that allows MLS listings to be syndicated on their site as like an ad that goes directly to the listing agent, has content information, all that kind of stuff. Basically, in essence, becoming a real estate listing portal. Okay, that is being rolled out. It might not be in your area yet, so don't go around talking to your sellers about it and all this kind of stuff. Pay attention. Listen, be observant, talk to your local association of realtors and see if your MLS is starting to syndicate to what's called House Canary. If not, it might be coming. I'm sure they're out approaching everybody. It might be even already a topic inside of your association. Who knows? Be engaged, be informed. Maybe it is in your area, whatever. But that's what's happening. This is a major shift. It says Google parent company Alphabet Inc. officially announced on Thursday the nationwide rollout of its enhanced local services ads for home listings across all 50 U.S. states. Okay, so they're making a statement. We're doing it everywhere. Okay. Here's what investors need to know about the launch. This is where I'm just throwing this out here, where I like this article because it tells you a little bit about what's going on when you look at stocks in regards to like other portals like Zillow and Redfin. Google enhances local services ads for real estate search. Google's expanded search format allows prospective home buyers to view critical property details such as pricing, images, and core home features powered by House Canary directly within the primary search results. Interested buyers can then instantly call, message, or book appointments with local real estate agents right from the Google advertisement. Zillow stock impacted by Alphabet's earlier pilot test. Now, this pilot test happened in the fall of 2025. I covered it on the show. We talked about it briefly. It was a very strategic small test, but that small little test affected Zillow's market share and their stock market. So let's see what happened here. This aggressive nationwide launch follows a limited mobile pilot that previously rattled the real estate technology market. In December 2025, Zillow Group Inc. shares plummeted more than 12% in a single session amid widespread reports that Alphabet was testing real estate listings directly in its search engine. This is when they were just testing it. It plummeted, right? Those initial test listings prominently featured complete property detail pages alongside immediate options to contact agents or request a home tour. It's a direct response to Zillow. Competitive headwinds for Zillow, Redfin, and legacy portals. Google's expansion into top-of-funnel home discovery will profoundly impact publicly traded real estate portals. Zillow Group and Redfin, owned by Rocket Companies, Inc., face massive downside risk as Google intercepts high-intent home buyers at the moment of search, completely bypassing their proprietary platforms. Guys, that's what's going to happen. I mentioned this yesterday. Your browser on your phone has Google built into it. You're just going to, when this becomes the norm, if someone wants to search for a property, they're just going to type it in that bar and call it a day. And if it's going to be pulling MLS data, why go to a portal? Why go at all? It's like you're going to get the information from one thing that's already embedded in your phone. Like, it's a very hard sell. Fox Corp, which operates Realtor.com through Move Inc. and CoStar Group Inc., the parent company of Homes.com, there's your connection of all those companies being bought up, must now compete with the tech giant for lucrative agent advertising budgets. Here's what it is. Right now, if I wanted to get as much leads as I possibly could on a particular listing, I could spend, really the only place I could really spend money to get good traction would be like Zillow, Realtor.com, and things like that, Homes.com, that kind of stuff, right? I would be spending money. I would be paying thousands of dollars a month to companies like Zillow to generate and send me leads. Well, guess what? With Google and their AdSense network and the way they operate, I can go straight to them and do it. They already have the same information that Zillow says they have through the MLS, so they're getting the same information only from the MLS. So I can go straight to a portal that captures billions of eyes every single day and pay my money there. It's a direct competitive nature against Zillow and things. By capturing consumer attention at the very beginning of the real estate journey, these legacy platforms potentially face severe competitive headwinds in retaining vital web traffic. Well, in there, that's a piggyback off of what I just talked about pretty much all day yesterday on the live stream. But this is happening, guys. Like, it's going to be rolling out. Who knows what this will truly be when all the dust settles and that kind of stuff. But I will say this, all this fighting you hear about Compass and Zillow and all these lawsuits and this kind of stuff, Google's just like, Hey, have fun, guys. Enjoy all your arguing and that kind of stuff. We'll just do this, right? And you know, everybody else wants to downplay it. Zillow's kind of downplaying it like it's not really that big of a deal. You know, it's like, you know, we're still very relevant. We have this information. We can do this. Google can't do that. Whatever. Consumer only cares about looking at houses and getting in front of those houses and going to look at those houses, guys. Like that's what they want to do. If they're moving to an area, they want to know what homes are available, and they also want to know what it's like to live in that area. And you take Google coupled with all the information that Google holds, and you couple it with Gemini, their AI model, and then you add the MLS data all into that, and then you add reviews and blog posts and all that kind of stuff from real estate agents. Then you add all the questions that people ask consistently all into one database. That search field becomes so stinking powerful to answer questions that the consumer has. So we get to be part of that equation inside of that search results. I think it's fascinating. It's time to, really begin to boost up your business Google profile page. Get on it quickly. Start putting reviews and stuff on that. I would start writing blog posts. I would go onto Reddit, start answering questions that consumers have about real estate. I would try to be the source for all that information, because why? Google uses their AI to pull information, and a lot of it does come from Reddit, guys. A lot of it comes from Reddit. And if you're the one on Reddit and engaging and answering questions, that kind of stuff, and you have listings and it's in a market someone's going to be going to, think about what Google's going to do inside of their algorithm. Let's think about this. If you have listings in that area, you have a solid Google business profile, you use Google services, you have all your reviews on side of Google, you have a website that has all kinds of blog posts and relevant information talking about your community and what you've done and your sales volume and all that kind of stuff. You then have comments on Reddit that you've specifically answered questions to. Guess what AI does? Guess what Google search does? It finds you and suggests you inside of the AI content and probably moves your properties up the list. Okay? I mean, it's just the way it works, guys. All right. Very good. I hope that is helpful. I hope that is helpful for you guys. Got something of value out of this. I will be back here tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, where you're watching me now. That will be my last live stream for the week. I possibly could jump on Friday. There's something I was going to talk about. Well, I might still push that to Monday. Depends on how my schedule goes. I've got to be on the road Thursday morning to some of my offices and visiting with some agents. Looking forward to that. So tomorrow will be my last live stream for the week. I enjoy this. I'm glad to be back. Enjoy hanging out with you guys. Appreciate all the comments and the engagement and the viewership and all that kind of stuff. Greatly appreciated. You guys would take time out of your schedule to come over here and just listen to me gab on about real estate stuff. So I don't take it for granted, guys. I do appreciate that greatly. All right, guys, have a great day. That is your real estate brief for today. If you found this helpful, please consider hitting the like button to tell YouTube you'd like to see more of this type of content. Consider subscribing, follow me on TikTok, those type of places, to join a community of real estate agents that are focused on building a business that is relationship focused first. I had a few more articles I'm going to go over, but that's what tomorrow is, and we'll see you then. Take care.